Hello again, and welcome to the second video of the procedural operations series for the F-18E Super Hornet, as provided by Vertical Reality Simulations. This video in the series will cover programming of navigational and communications identification for underfoot parameters, and basically getting the aircraft ready to speak to ATC and identified properly so we don't get shot down, and able to navigate from point to point. Now that the aircraft started, we'll be able to get into that directly. Starting the aircraft is my first video, which you can check out on my page. So we'll start with basic communications. As with every other aircraft that you'll pretty much ever see, there are two usable radios in it. In true F-18, these are multi-mode, very complex radios that can do not only AM modulation as used by regular air traffic communications, but can do FM modulation or military SINCGARs, and have a really stupendously wide frequency range. However, AM is the only currently supported waveform, as that is the only one supported by FSX and the VATSIM network and everything else. So from our upfront control display, there's sort of a top menu, the DDI itself, that defaults to electronic warfare and is just kind of a top menu for the whole thing. You can bring up your radar, which is currently off, as you can see from the Maltese cross, since we have weight on wheels. There's a lot of interlocks in this aircraft like that. Documentation online shows what that's about. You can bring up the HUD, stores management. You have various options you can bring up. Most important for us right now, you also have, by the way, shortcuts to your radios here, channel 9 and channel S currently showing. Most important for us, though, is the CNI, which allows us to input all of these parameters. Nearly all of the data entry in this aircraft is done straight through the UFCD, which has its handy touchscreen features. So, launching straight in with communications, if we want to go to one of our radios, we can see they're both on right now. I can turn them off by turning the volume all the way down, and you'll see these divots go away. Radios are no longer powered and no longer able to transmit. However, this one is selected as the primary. If I want to select the other one, all I have to do is tap it. Back to this one, turn them both on. Both radios are now functioning. These options, as I said, are not currently supported. In the F-18, there is an aircraft configuration manager that you can access outside of Flight Sim while it's not turned on, that allows you to set frequency presets, and you can see me scrolling through them. There are 10 of those plus 2 special presets. There is a guard channel that does not change and is not really selectable. M I'll get into in a minute. C is one of the special presets, and S is the last special preset. I keep that as Unicom since I do a lot of VATSIM flying. It's just helpful to just be able to spin all the way to the right. These are your selectors for COM1 and COM2, the rotating channel selector knobs in between the volumes. M is already set. I'm actually currently connected to the VATSIM network, and you can hear I just connected to New York Center's frequency 125.32. If I want to change to something else,
the localizer.
I just program in the frequency, hit enter, boom, it's selected to that. If I want to change one of the other ones, see, we're on channel S right now, which is one of the presets. I cannot change the presets from here, but if I want to change the frequency that's in this radio to something that's not a preset, all I have to do, program it in, hit enter, and you'll see, oh, actually S is changeable. I had forgotten that. However, if I'm back on, say, channel 10, one of the regular presets, and I program in 1219 and punch that. Okay. For some reason, typically when you do this, it jumps you to channel M, because this is the standard selectable one. It's not a preset. This is your sort of hot patch that will just change to whatever you need it to be. So if you need to change the frequency on the fly, that's the best place to be, your channel M. Anyway, that was odd. Next after that, probably even more important, is identification friend or foe. A lot of this is not used on VATSIM or by most of us at all, but I'll go through it anyway, just cursorily. There is an on-off switch for the IFF system itself. As with several other items, you'll see that with the ILS and the TACAN radios as well. You can individually power the radios in this aircraft. Remember, transponders, TACAN transmitters and receivers, VOR receivers, ILS receivers, they are all radios, and you can individually power them on their menus through the USC. There is a Mode 5 available in real aircraft, military aircraft in our current generation that is not available here. It's an encrypted version of Mode 4, but I'll just go through what's here anyway. Mode 1 is just a mission identification used internally, military only. Mode 2 is a broadcast mission identification, again a military use code, military use mode that broadcasts to stations that require it what this aircraft is, what it's doing, basically. Mode 4 kind of goes hand in hand with that and sort of actually comes before it in a way, because Mode 4 is, are you friendly? It's a coded signal sent in response to a coded interrogation from another aircraft or a ground station, and this aircraft transmits out that information to say, this is my identification code, this is what team I belong to, basically, and from that, friendly systems will hopefully identify this aircraft as friendly if it's set properly. If it doesn't respond, or if it doesn't respond correctly, it will be classified as hostile. Mode 3, however, is what we're generally concerned with, because that's the civilian transponder modes. Mode 3, Sierra or Charlie. Sierra being non-altitude reporting and Charlie being altitude reporting. Right now it's set to Charlie. If I unselect that, now we're mode Sierra. We're not going to be reporting our pressure altitude, and we'll just show up as a primary target on air traffic control radar. Just like with anything else, if you you just select it, bring it up so that you have that mode set there. If I want to change my mode to, all I have to do, select 2. If I want to change 3, I want to be VFR. Fine, I've selected that, and I also selected mode Charlie, so we're now altitude reporting. Next after that is probably TACAN programming. For that, this is when we start to get into actual navigation and looking at where we are and what we're doing. On our DDI displays, we have 2 top menus, TAC and Support. The bottom central button selects us between TAC, which has all the combat systems items, from situational awareness to stores, to our attack radar, to being able to stick your HUD down here, which is kind of silly, and electronic warfare, which is not silly at all. Support provides us with a whole lot of other stuff. Bit checks to check that the computer systems are working properly. Checklists, also helpful. Engine statistics. FCS is the status of the flight control system. Since this aircraft is all fly-by-wire, that shows all of that. Come back to me, please. There's fuel, flight path angle calculations, and more radio selection. Keeps putting me back to TAC. I think TAC is the default when you go back there. You have the ADI, should you need it. Nobody ever really does. GPS, which just shows your current location and characteristics of your signal to the GPS system. And the HUSI, which is by far the most important support item there. Very, very full featured. There's many items here, and I'll just kind of It won't be nearly as quick as I would like, but I'll just kind of breeze through what's here available to you. Drop that reset. Your Huzzy has the opportunity. It's basically a map as well. These items that are listed here are actually presets that I've already set as waypoints through the aircraft configuration manager. You can't edit those through the aircraft, but you can add. Well, you can edit them. It's just, ACM gives you the opportunity to put them in, so you don't have to touch them. If you want to fly to a waypoint, you simply select that multifunction button, and now you can see. Let's go back to McGuire. That's us right there. If you want to navigate to a TACAN, now you can put it in the upfront control display. This also goes for VORs and Vortex. Even for a regular VOR that does not have a TACAN associated with it, all navigation aids except ILSs are put into this aircraft by their TACAN channel. And you'll see on SkyVector and other websites that have charts available, you'll see that for every VOR listed, there is not only the VOR frequency, say 110.6 for McGuire, but also a channel 43 on the other side of the identifier. So it'll say 110.6 GXU 43. Channel 43 is the TACAN channel for the McGuire Vortec. And if it was just a VOR without a TACAN involved, it would be the same thing. That would also be the TACAN channel number that corresponds to that VOR frequency. When you put in that channel here, it will listen to 110.6 for a VOR signal, as well as trying to communicate with the TACAN. TACANs also involve transmit, so you have the option to set transmit receive, receive only, or air-to-air, which is useful for air-to-air refueling. There are TACANs embedded in tanker aircraft that are helpful for locating them in adverse conditions. Transmit receive is the default and most sensible mode because that allows you to use VORs and TACANs without readjusting anything. If I want to put in the McGuire TACAN, frequency 110.6 corresponds to channel 43, as my handy dandy SkyVector chart tells me. So 43, channel X-ray. 110.6 would be X-ray. 110.65 would be 55 Yankee. But for now, and you can hit that, and you can change between X-ray and Yankee. It's just it's a step up, basically. And you'll see over here on the DDI, we are now showing the GXU TACAN at 240 degrees for 1.5 miles. And that's it. Right there. You'll see it's sitting under 14, which is the designator that the DDI is assigned to the KWRI waypoint I have set. It just happens to be co-located under that. If you see me hit, for instance, 85 for Robbinsville, I need to scale out again. You have your scale button out here that just steps through that. Oh, again, that's co-located with a waypoint. So we'll go back to 43. Close enough. And I'm just hitting my course selector to do that. You can change your course selector down here as well by this selector switch. The same thing with your heading bug, which you'll see floating around the right side of your DDI as I bring it around to our present position. I'm going to go ahead and set that for 24-ish, 240, since that's our active runway at McGuire. I'm going to do the same thing for the course selector, drop that around to 240. If we were flying an ILS into McGuire, you won't see very much of this illuminate well on the ground. But if we were flying an ILS into McGuire, again, back at the CNI, we have the option to go into ILS. And you'll see, again, these divots signify that this system is powered and operational. So if I go and I turn my TACAN off, you'll see the divot's gone. ILSs, strangely, are put in by frequency. So, again, it won't show up very well since we're not actually flying the ILS. You'll see if we were airborne, and you'll see in a future video how this looks. The navigation aids that show up on the HUD for navigating to the ILS onto the localizer and the glide slope. However, same principle. 110.1 is runway 24's ILS at McGuire. I can enter that in, and if I want to fly along the ILS and track it, at least, you have to do it manually, but if I want to track it, pop, hit the ILS button next to the TACAN. That will also add that. It's a separate radio in this aircraft from your TACAN nav radio. You have an option for modes in your Huzzy. Again, there's a lot of documentation for this online, but it can be kind of helpful to see some things sometimes. So if I scale back out, you'll see, oh, that looks weird. Okay, target up, so let's do north up. And now you'll see, oh yeah, that's New Jersey, that's New York. Yeah, we actually have a map here that shows us where we are, which is sometimes very handy and has some other information. Back to target up, we'll turn off the map because that's just annoying. And we'll go back to the Huzzy. So that covers communication, IFF, TACAN or VOR navigation, and the ILS. Waypoints are slightly more kludgy, but we'll go into that now. Right now I have, so as I was selected, this would fly me along a radial as selected for a TACAN. If I want to fly, I can do exactly the same thing with waypoints as well, based on the GPS or INS location that this aircraft is maintaining. You can set where your position information comes from as well, and I want that on GPS. I can do the same thing with waypoints though. I can select a waypoint and I can fly along a radial to it. The one downside to this is that as you go up through waypoints, if you haven't done sequencing, which is complicated and I won't go into it right now. If you haven't sequenced waypoints, if you just go from one waypoint to another, boom, now you're going to try to fly the same radial for that other waypoint, even though that might be half a world away. And you'll suddenly find yourself turning rapidly if you have your autopilot selected. However, programming waypoints is interesting. For that, we're going to go down to our lower, our lower DDI. Bring up the contrast a little bit. And it shows exactly the same thing. They're tied together, so if I change waypoint here, it'll change up there. You saw that in the corner, I'm sure. If I want to change a waypoint, I go into data. Ah, look, I have the coordinates for that waypoint, all of the information for it. If I want to add one, let's do it that way. If I want to add another waypoint, actually these are already in here because I was playing with this earlier. I'm going to undesignate that. There's a way you can set a bullseye or a known reference point for air-to-air maneuvering, and that can be helpful. That shows up on your situational awareness screen. It'll show up on your HUD, and it'll generally make itself known to you so that you have a good reference point for air combat maneuvering and ground-controlled intercept or air-controlled intercept from AWACS if you're trying to join up or intercept another aircraft. However, if I want to change what this waypoint is, we have two ways we can do this. One, I can just go through a list and you can see within, I can select the distance, but within up to 100 miles, I can get a list of VORs, NDBs, or airports that I can assign as the waypoint. So if I need to fly to, oh, excuse me, that wasn't right, wrong side. If I want to fly to the Canarsie VOR, I simply select that, and now that it's selected on the left side, transfer. Now Canarsie, you'll see the coordinates changed, is now waypoint 5. And it's that simple. However, one thing that you may notice is not in here are fixes. And those can be extraordinarily useful to be able to program. The method for that, if I go back to my waypoint screen, you can see information for TACANs and where your aircraft is as well on here, but because this is just sort of your general data screen. But if I go back to waypoint and I want to change this waypoint to something custom, or you know what, let's go find another one that's empty. Waypoint 7. I bring it up to the USCD and you'll see now we have degrees here. And I'm going to put in Dixie, which is a very common fix used by aircraft departing the wire. And I've now looked that up on SkyVector, apologies for that delay. And the coordinates for that will be 4005, 96, and don't forget your trailing 2 zeros to bring it over to the correct spacing. North. Now that the northing is programmed in that, and don't forget we still have to do the easting. Don't forget the trailing zeros, and you can go back by one. Well, that just killed it, but typically you can go back by one by hitting the clear button. .74 degrees, 9 minutes, 9.87 minutes west. And now Dixie is programmed. So with the waypoint selected, we now have this sort of dubious dot in a circle, this bullseye that shows us where Dixie is. And we can fly to that, we can use it just like it's a TACAN or a VOR or any other waypoint. You can actually set an elevation to it if that has any relevance to you based on your mission requirements. And you can also set an offset. That's what I just went to. So for that waypoint I can actually put an offset of a bearing of 90, any range of, you know, say it's supposed to be 5 kilometers east of Dixie, where I'm supposed to be targeting for whatever reason. I can put that in, and now I actually get this offset on there that gives me another marker, and that can be designated as well. You can sort of play around with this stuff a little bit. And I forget where I'm going. Yes. Okay, so we've now designated a waypoint. We've learned how to program communication, IFF, and the rest of our radios and navigation equipment. There's other information on some of the other things you can do here and some of the other options, but this is all, you know, stuff that's available online. I'm trying to go procedurally if possible. So that's probably the extent of the boring stuff. After this video, we'll probably get ready to get up into the air in our next one, and maybe get airborne, do some basic air maneuvering and navigation. Thanks for